2, 1. Be rad for Jesus.
Be rad.
That didn't work.
I was doing a chorus.
I'm leaving it. Yeah. All right, now it's time for the big bridge. Be rad for Jesus. Right down. Take down the gates.
I love it.
All right. Enough death metal intro for one episode. Scott, welcome to the Be Rad for Jesus podcast. I am a host, Brian Lucas. Here with me is my co-host, still not on camera, Scott Lucas. B-host.
You are a host, I am B-host.
Yeah,
or you should be square and I should be triangle, because no one can say which one's better, but A sounds better than B, so.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Well, yes. That.
But you do all. To be fair, you do all the work. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, I do the editing. I'm finding better workflows. I'm blending everything into. Going video actually made it easier. So, surprisingly. But anyway, Scott, how are you? How was your Easter?
Easter was great. We did we had like Team Voltron on my worship team at church. So we have volunteer worship leaders, and there's about 4 or 5 of us. We had almost everybody there, which was fun. So it felt like Voltron.
What does Team Voltron mean?
You know, like we all assembled to form a giant robot and fought crime.
Okay, cool. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. No,
that's what we did too.
It was more just like, you know, we were all on stage at once. Normally, like, we take turns leading, and maybe 1 or 2 of us will join to lead one song that week or something. But there were like 5 worship singers on our stage, which we never do. Where, you know, so that was fun.
Yeah,
and then
it must be nice to have a big stage.
It was a good time. And then we had like, I don't know, awesome. 10,000 yellow balloons that we put all over downtown Pomona.
Wow,
which was fun because the theme was lifted, so it was neat.
Oh, cool.
What about yours? What did you guys do at?
Look at this. We can kill birds. No, just kidding.
We popped them all. Unfortunately, I was like, what a waste.
So many critters could have died. All right. Did you guys do anything? Did you do anything special, like in service, or like how did it compare to a normal service?
I think that was, you know, normally we normally do basically a similar thing to what we did this time. We normally do like a nice worship set. Typically in Easter we've done a lot of stuff that's like we'll do a spoken word or like a art display, but this time it was basically like a regular service, just kind of more. There was more music, like you know, we usually do a worship set and then have a talk and then go home, and this was like halfway through we're going to come back on, do a special song, then, you know, at the end with a special song. We also had confetti cannons, which was just one step below lasers. So
green lasers absorbing Jesus into the UFO. That's
exactly what everybody
Do they still
wants.
have those? Did you go to the play?
No, they did a special version.
Because our old church, Covina Assembly, now called Luminate.
I think it changed again. They just got another pastor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so they don't have Lee anymore, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is interesting. Yeah, I was sad to hear that in a way, because I feel like it's always turmoil to, you know, when you lose the leader of a church, it's always turmoil. So I feel bad, but Marlon, our friend Marlon had gone there, and they did a much shorter version. I don't know if there was lasers and flying Jesus though, because that's.
I just saw that our friend Jarrett, who we've talked about a couple times, but is an actor and singer, and he leads worship at Purpose Church out in Pomona or Fullerton or one of those. Pomona, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, he stepped back into his role. I was going to say he resurrected his role, ironic, as Jesus in the Easter play at Covina. It's and I was like tempted to drive down for the weekend to see the play. I was like, I have to see that. The nostalgia is killing me.
Well, he started off.
I last saw that thing like 10 years ago.
He started off playing John, which like is a big role because he's like the narrator of the play, like as if he's writing from Patmos, where he was later, you know, exiled. So he's talking. It's like in the play, John is the one taking you through the gospel, basically.
Yeah.
And then the next year he got promoted to Satan because it's a musical, so there's a lot of singing. He's a talented dude. And then finally he became Jesus, which is the ultimate, upgrade, I guess.
Of course, yeah.
So
you need the best guy doing Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was recently, the last couple of years that he made that progression again, or that was like the back in the day. That was the back in the day, right? Yeah. One of my two favorite memories of that play, because we were part of church doing that for a long time, and it is overall a really powerful play to see, but it does have some cheese to it, because it's Christian stuff from the 90s. And but there was our friend who played Satan for most of the time that we were there, our friend Nate. I remember him sitting, and we were all just chilling in the pews watching one of the rehearsals. And old John is kind of the main narrator, right? And he's singing all the main, telling all the main parts, and has kind of the theme song running through. And it's about, like standing on my faith and all of this. And I just remember Nate, who's in full Satan gear, all black with like weird face makeup. He looks kind of like a, Darth Maul kind of thing without red skin. And he pulls up his sandal, and one of the lines is standing on my faith. And as that's being sung, he goes, standing on my face, and puts the sandal on his face. I for a long time, like I never even heard the real line anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Standing on my face. But then that, and then one year they actually put Jesus on a cross, and then they lift him up, right?
Yeah.
And they have like cotter pinned like U-shaped handle things for his hands to go in. So it looks like he's, there's a nail going through the center of his hand, and then it's got cotter pins on the back of it. So it holds on, and he hangs onto that. And then they lift him up, and they actually like have to insert the cross into this bracket built into this top of the stage.
Yeah.
But I mean, that stage has a huge like stone centerpiece for real, and then like a thin layer of black carpet laid over it for the play. Then there's like a 6-foot tall tomb set, and then on top of that are like a couple layers of like little paths and stairs and other rock things, so they can kind of rearrange for all the different pieces. So for the Calvary Hill, Jesus is up on a cross pretty high off the ground. He's at the pinnacle of the whole thing, and they throw him up there, and one of his hands wasn't locked in properly, and he just swings out. And I mean, man, he said, he was like, I just, but he's looking out
that
for
was
a moment,
rehearsal,
looking down like, that was during a dress rehearsal, but he's looking down like 15 feet at like what he knows is just solid stone and nearly coming off head first, and then manages to hang out with his other hand and drop down to his feet and like lands it pretty gracefully, all things considered, on like the next level down. He still dropped a good like 4 or 5 feet. And then he like gets up, he's like, I'm okay. And everyone's like, oh, and he goes, and then as he's getting out, he's like, I just wanted you to know I could do it if I wanted. All right. And that like, oh man, part of me wants that to be in the play. Yeah. like just for those of you who weren't aware.
Yeah. I could have gotten down. I could have sent 10,000 angels, just so you know.
Right. So yeah, that, man, but seeing that Jarrett was doing this again just brought back all those memories. I think I still have the DVD somewhere of the play from one year, so I'm gonna go back and watch it. But so for us, for Easter, I know, we've come from many churches where Easter and Christmas tend to be a time where the more I thought about this, the more I had trouble justifying doing it again. We talked about how you have all these guest people coming, all these new people who don't go to church.
Right.
You're giving them a taste of your church for the first time.
Right.
And so the theory is we want something very easy to invite into. So we're going to do, like for Christmas, we're going to do a bunch of songs that are going to tell the story for us. And we're going to have some dramatic pieces and some maybe spoken word or some poetry. And
right.
We're going to have some scripture readings throughout. And we're going to do all this stuff. And I've done a little bit of that too. And we were going through, and then you have like a really short sermon. And I remember from several churches, the same vibe from the production team, like in planning meetings, sitting there and like they're looking at the lead pastor or whoever's preaching for Easter. And they're like, and you're only doing a 7-minute message, or, you have 10 minutes and not a second more, like we're telling him he has 8 because he really has 9. And we're not giving him any longer than that. We are starting the song
longer than 10
at 9 minutes. Yeah. And I get that from hey, this is a big moment, so let's go big and do something kind of spectacular and do something like that Easter play and whatnot. And I even remember when we were at Covina, I remember that the actual Easter services, Sunday services, were fairly standard. And I remember like I was so wrapped up in the hype of the play and everything else. Like, why are we doing the normal thing? Like, why is the message still so long? Why is this? And it seemed like we were missing what other people were doing, where like we incorporate the play like into the service, or something. And like, why aren't we doing something like that? But then as I thought about it, I was like, man, how many people are going to come back the next week and be like, oh, you guys don't like do that? That's just, okay, I see. Yeah. So this is more like what I thought church would be like, or, whatever. And so this year we just said, what if we just, we'll do songs specifically about the resurrection. We'll do a couple of extra things. We'll make sure the band is pretty on point. Yeah. But other than that, let's just do church. Yeah. Let's do a normal church service. And for anything, if the part that you're going to minimize, if the teaching of the word is an important piece of the service, why would you minimize that and do the least amount of it on the most important day, both theologically for Christianity and experientially for like we're getting this one shot at all these people who may not normally attend church. So why don't we do why don't we do what we normally do, or emphasize solid teaching? And if that is the best way to do solid teaching that is accessible for people, to do a short message and a whole lot of extra music, why don't we do that every week?
Right.
And so that was kind of what we wrestled with.
But that's where we've talked about this before, but that's where it goes back to, are you doing church for church people, or are you doing church for the non-believer? And then you run into a lot of snares either way, because if you're doing church for church people, which is good because it's instruction, then then you're going to miss out, because people, you might end up using a lot of Christianese, and you might be alienating people who have no cultural reference to anything you're talking about. You might even mention David, and people are like, maybe he's talking about David and Goliath. I don't know. But if you mention Saul, they don't even know who you're talking about, first of all. And then especially if you mention Saul, who was Apostle Paul later, then they're like, what, is this the same dude that lived like 1,000 years? Like, so, I mean, there's a lot. But then you can go the other way where you're so seeker friendly. There's just, it's 1,000 miles wide and an inch deep, and it's like,
right.
So I think that, I think you're right. I think the answer is just, this is what we do on a Sunday. It's a celebration service. We get together, we worship together, take communion sometimes, or whatever we do as a group. Yeah. And then do baptisms. Those are the things we do as a group. But, my belief is that church is really, small group. And that's really where, because a Sunday morning is church too, because you're gathered in Jesus' name, but it has a different function. I think that's the time you do stuff like we take communion together. That's a good thing to do together. I think doing baptisms publicly, like worshiping together, there's something different about that. Praying together in a large group, there's something cool about that. But ultimately, if you go into a living room with a bunch of other believers, you're all, you can hear someone's heart. You can stop what you're doing, minister to them right there in a personal way. So that's where I think there's kind of the dichotomy with Easter, is that it feels like, that's what you run into very firmly, is like, how do we make people, real quick. I was watching a new podcast by a comedian and his brother, and they just give advice. And I was like, oh, I kind of want to watch this just to see, like, what is their advice and what are people calling in about? And someone had written in, because I don't think they were, wanted to show their face or voice, and they said, kind of like me, but they just because it's because I don't have a capture card or a webcam, but I don't have a laptop anymore. So anyway, said, he grew up in a religious household and didn't want to do it anymore, like didn't want to be part of that anymore. And it was so interesting to hear their advice because, they stayed away from like bashing any religions, but they were like, well, what does, they're like, well, if his parents are 80, just suck it up, like, but if you're a young guy and, you're just like, they're like, you don't have to make it a thing where you're like, excuse me, everyone, I hate what you believe and you're dumb and there's no proof for this. And, he's like, you could just, and then one of them was like, yeah, you could just be eating dinner. It's like, so Jesus, is there any proof he existed or no? And so it's just, and again, it's they're not believers, obviously. And then the funniest part was in, reference to our conversation is they go, it's like, yeah, you don't want to go to church every week if you don't believe it. That's hard. And then they're like, yeah, they should make church more fun. Like they started going into like, like the different, how, a traditional church with a choir, how that's, a lot more, they're always up there, during the sermon, still singing. And then, they make a point and they get louder, and I was like, but that's kind of the way that people look at, our, culture as a church is different than what, we look at it, and so it's almost like when you're first going to church, it's like, give me a reason to be here. I don't want to just sit here and listen. Like it's like going to a graduation, it's like, oh yeah. Okay, here we are. We get it. We already did the work and now we have to listen to 5 speeches from people we don't know, So,
yes,
I think that's what it can
that's
be.
That's where I'm, that's where I'm looking at, like what do people, like what was important to us. That was the fun part about getting to plant a church, is getting to rethink all those things and think, what do we need? What do we not need? What's biblically important to identify ourselves as a church? How far off of that can we go? And so we landed on, the important things, that we needed to have 2 components, that you have to have a large gathering, and biblically, you also have, meetings in homes.
Right.
And that between those, there's a smattering of things that are supposed to happen. There's supposed to be a devotion to the teaching of the word, the leaders and those called to be in that teacher and pastor role are supposed to be able to teach the word and to pray over the people and pray for God's will for the church. There's supposed to be worship and rejoicing and giving thanks to the Lord. There should be food and fellowship. There's meant to be generous giving and meeting each other's needs, both monetarily, physically, spiritually, emotionally. That people dug in and got into each other's lives and found ways to give and make sure that everybody in the community had what they needed. Mm-hmm. And those who had excess were willing to share that and contribute and all of that. And so we've leaned all the way into trying to make sure that that is the church that we are, and that we try to do those things and are trying to find the right balance of, okay, how do we set up our teaching? What's the right amount of time? What's the right format so that it's both approachable to somebody new who comes in, but so that it is edifying and celebratory for the people in the church as well? Because it seems to be a bit of both. And so anyway, we did a couple of things. One thing we did do was, I rewrote a spoken word that I had done in the past. So I was like, no, I got a shot at this, and it's an Easter related thing. It's related to the song Glorious Day, and, the one that the chorus is, you called my name and I ran out of that grave. And so I did one related to that a few years ago at a different church. And so I rewrote it because I wasn't super satisfied with how I'd written it the first time. And so I got it together again and I did that. And then, I was looking for clips from service to share. And so that was one of them that I shared. And then a bunch of clips from the sermon. And then today, my friends at Sunday Cool released a video where they're like, they've got a couple characters for funny videos that they've made that they kind of make fun of Christian influencers. And so they did the 2 of them tag teaming a really bad Christian spoken word, but it's like done really well. Like they hit all the beats really well. And it has all the like puns in it and wordplay, but it's so lame. And Oh man.
And it turns out it was your spoken word that no.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was like, I feel attacked, guys, because this is like, I just did a spoken word, and I know a ton of people did at Easter. Like that was a big thing. And so I'm sure there was intentional timing on their part to do that.
Right.
But like, I mean, it had lines like, all of a sudden he's like, the enemy of the church is, and he's like, Jeff Bezos. And he's like, you've got lots of doll heirs, but I would think with all those doll heirs, you would get some doll hairs and cover up that bald head.
Super edifying. Yeah.
Yeah, just being super lame and dumb, but like they had all the, it's like a little cheesed up, but they had all the right, emotional dynamics and beats in it and the way they did it. And they had like a different spoken word voice. And I was just like, oh, this is actually kind of better than mine too. But it was so lame. It was filmed really nice too, though. So
nice.
I was like, I don't know if I want to share this one, guys. I feel bad. Oh man. Speaking of crazy rich people, how about Elon?
Yeah, I mean the most interesting thing that's happened in social media, I think in outside of their creation, in my opinion, because this is a really interesting thing, because you have, somebody who is basically saying, I will offer you more than your shares are worth, and I will buy them all, for $46 billion.
Wait, so Elon Musk comes in, buys a significant, he already bought
he just bought not like 10%. Yeah.
Chunk of Twitter, which I mean was millions.
No, yeah,
billions?
it was
millions.
$1 billion probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he bought 10% of Twitter, but a big chunk of it, that makes him a significant player and influential person in Twitter, which is, part of the good thing, I guess, about social media is that it's not super controlled by, theoretically one person, although the opposite is true with like Zuckerberg, and Meta.
Yeah.
And so,
which, by the way, real quick tangent, probably like the only time I've wanted to like go and buy a cabin and just like leave everything behind is like they're running an ad right now celebrating targeting of ads. It's literally like you should watch it right now. It's so creepy. It is the creepiest thing that I've seen in my whole life because it's so gross. It's literally like the lyrics are some like, can I pull it up just for a second? Like,
yeah,
dude, it's seriously like, this is really apropos of what we're talking about. And I've always wanted to say apropos correctly, so I just did it. But Meta targeted ad.
Yeah.
Because, oh gosh, it's not even on Facebook. Let's see. Facebook targeted ad commercial. Dude, if I can't find this, like something's wrong. Okay. Yeah, I can't find it. Let me try again. Meta
Scary.
targeted ad.
No, I think I saw what you're talking about.
So basically, I mean, the reason I want to find it is because it's like, it's an unreal, I can't find it. So they must not have it on YouTube or like, otherwise it'd probably be searchable.
Yeah.
But it basically says it's a musical. It's super bright and colorful. And this girl's on like a trolley or something. And it's like, something from my life was missing, but I didn't know what it was till it slid down my screen. Like, I'm like, that is so gross. You're literally.
I feel like I saw that on Hulu or something.
It's been on. We've been watching Ink Master on Paramount Plus, and which is the only reason we got Paramount Plus, by the way.
Dude, that show is great. I watch
so good.
I'm addicted to all the clips on YouTube.
Yeah, dude, 10 out of 10. It's like the best reality like competition show ever made. It's so good. It's really interesting. I like the flash challenges that they do, where they just have to like, you're going to make art out of this 12 by 12 piece of wood and one bucket of one color of stain, and it's like mind blowing when they're done. Anyway, so this ad literally says the people in the ad are saying there was something in my life that was missing, but then I saw an ad for it and it made me feel better. And how would I have known about it? And then it's like, like the tagline is something like, your life is full, or something, like It's so gross. It's literally so gross because I'm like, because they're so, and then the other thing, they're trying it to small businesses. They're like, oh, support small businesses. That's how I'm like, tell me how many targeted ads you see that aren't for Amazon. And like, this is not a small business support move. This is, this is literally them saying trying to appropriate small business to make them feel morally better about the fact that they are stealing and monitoring and surveilling your every move to try to squeeze as much value out of you as they possibly can as a human being. That's literally what they're doing. And now they're making an ad about it and putting it on a positive spin. It just couldn't get any creepier. Right. Like nothing has made me want to quit Facebook and Instagram so much.
I love that the parody for the ad is literally the thing that they for sure do, that everyone knows, where people are like, I was having a conversation with somebody in the car about this random thing, and like not even a real conversation. Like we were driving, and then I looked and went, oh wow, the new Bronco looks kind of weird, huh? Yeah. And then I got home and I saw an ad for the new Bronco on my Facebook feed, and then on my Alexa thing, and then on my Google thing, and like then it was on TV. And I'm like, well, okay.
There was a really a good episode of a podcast I don't really listen to anymore because it kind of stopped doing what made it cool. It was called Reply All. It was a Gimlet podcast, and they did an episode. I can't remember the episode name. Maybe we can find it later and pop it in the show notes or something. But basically, they did an episode about like targeted ads, and their theory was actually creepier than what. Like you think like Facebook uses your microphone, like that's what people think, like not you. I mean like the general you. Like people think Facebook uses their microphone or your phone is listening to you and that's how it happens. And their theory was basically, there's nothing in the code that they can see that shows that they have control of your microphone. New phones tell you when somebody's using your microphone, like there's an icon. So, they're like, what their theory is even creepier. Their theory is, they know so much about you. They usually know where you are. They usually know that you're in close proximity with somebody and that you're friends or that you're linked on social media in any way and that you are both in the geographic area and that you both have similar interests and your overlapping interests might result in you talking about a thing. And that's how that's literally, I'm like, if that's true, that's worse than you listening to me because now you just know me.
You know me better than I know me.
You know me better than I know myself just based on my online habits. Like it's so creepy. So anyway, back to Elon. All that to say, that's the toxic. That's the toxic part that nobody cares about, and I'm really passionate about it. I think this is like the issue of our time is probably like. Other than things that are, a detriment to our physical health, such as war and famine, this is like a big deal because all of us are now wrapped up in a device that we don't really know what it's doing. And and it's creepy and it's gross. And I think, that's the toxicity that no one cares about because they're like, well, at the end of the day, I get a package in, 8 hours sent to my house and maybe that's worth it. So and it's hard to say it's not because everybody uses Amazon Prime and so
everybody going on the other hand I do want that thing.
Exactly. On the other hand, I really do want a stuffed eagle. You can probably get anything in 2 days. It's like,
oh man, you can get. Have you seen speaking of a stuffed eagle? Have you seen the Patriot Bible?
No, I'm Googling it right now.
It is the cringiest, like, no, this is not Jesus friendly thing.
I already hate it. American Patriots Bible.
Yeah.
Well,
it's so bad.
I think they've got this mixed up. I think it's supposed to be like Citizen of Heaven Patriot Bible.
Yeah.
It's allegiance to the wrong kingdom, folks.
Right. Yeah. That's, no, it's really, really all about American exceptionalism and patriotism and everything. It's not good. It's missing the point of the gospel and it's tying it to a country, which is just super strange.
Like as if this was the culmination of all God's work was, our democracy. Yeah. But right, so anyway, so Elon made a bid to buy the entire company. Yes. He's the owner of Tesla, owner of SpaceX, owner of the Boring Company. Started PayPal,
which literally
I believe,
bores holes. That's my favorite company name ever.
Yeah, the Boring Company is the best.
They dig stuff.
So he essentially has made people are calling it a hostile takeover because he's basically saying, I will buy your whole company. And he's relying on the Security and Exchange Commission in the United States, which is where Twitter is founded and located, to basically say it would be against your shareholders' interests not to take this because it's a guaranteed return, and you would distribute the funds of this sale, yada yada. And Elon basically said in a TED interview that he wants to keep as many shareholders as he can, but he wants to take the company essentially private. So he can only keep like 2,000 shareholders, so it's not a lot because probably everybody has Twitter. If you have a 401k, there's probably some of it in there. So that's the essential broad strokes thing. What really is going on from his kind of speech that he said is he believes that what Twitter does in quote unquote shadow banning or quote unquote down voting or whatever you want to call it. There's an unknown thing that happens if you put a tweet out where sometimes it gets viral, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it gets lots of likes, sometimes it doesn't, and nobody knows why, and nobody knows what they're doing. There's also a lot of not evidence, but just like circumstantially, it's like there's so many things where somebody ideologically that is unliked right now gets their tweets really buried, or they're not, or even for instance, just the agreement for something like the Hunter Biden laptop story, which New York Times now has said that's 100% legit. It was a real thing. There was sensitive info on there. That wasn't good. Like the tech companies just decided that's not real. And so Elon, I think, is seeing this. It. From what I can hear, this is me projecting, but this is just me piecing together what I've read about him and what I've watched the interviews where he's talked about it. Essentially, there has to be a way for us to know what's going on with the algorithm of what's happening to my tweet. There has to be a erring on the side of keeping things there that you don't like. He word for word quote, he said, if someone you don't like says something you don't like and they're allowed to say it, that's the hallmark of a functioning free speech place.
Right.
And so right now
that's a free society.
I would say that's not true on Twitter. I don't think you can say whatever you want and have it go okay. I think you get people hate you and dox you and want to here's your address, here's a picture of your kids, and it's so people are worried that's going to happen more. And I'm like, it's already happening to an alarming amount now. So,
I know a girl on TikTok who disappeared for a while because she got doxxed. And she was just like, I can't for my mental health. I'm out. And she's a comedian who was an atheist who got saved recently and started, saying all this Christian stuff and made a comment that was, probably it was questionable, maybe not the greatest comment to have made, but people took the absolute worst possible context for it and highlighted that as the only thing and said, you're making a mockery of the Holocaust. And therefore you're a Jew hating, lunatic, right wing, psychopath, and you don't deserve to live. And
these same people are calling Ben Shapiro a Nazi at 10 minutes later.
Yeah, exactly. And they're right. And or Zelensky,
exactly.
No, that's not how that works. He had family members. Anyway, so so she disappeared for a while and now she's back on TikTok, but all the comments are off on all of her videos. She's not allowing for anybody to comment or interact with anything she does. She's posting stuff, but she's not allowing for any interaction because people whole accounts were started showing her address, pictures of her around. She was like, whoa, hang on. This is not okay. You guys are, I'm getting all these death threats. And then you're telling those people where I live. Yeah. That's not cool.
I know. And that's a real thing. Insane. That's it's already happening. And I think, essentially I'm from what Elon has said, I'm definitely hoping this happens. I don't think it will. I'm sure they'll find some legal jujitsu to get out of it. I think that Twitter is one of the most toxic things that's happened to society. Yeah. Because it's a gross form of communication. It's too short. All intention is lost. For all the good things it's done, I think it's a net negative because, I mean, people can, tweet out things that are happening that you might not be able to see in a traditional manner.
Right.
And that's a positive mostly. So I think that this could be a good thing because I just think that nobody is checking this culture. If you watch movies like The Social Dilemma, it was a Netflix documentary that was really powerful. There's kind of an unchecked ruling class, basically. It's a weird way to put it, but it's like these people basically are ruling our lives, and we're inviting them to do it, and we're gladly taking that ownership over us in terms of which, if you put it that way, it doesn't sound so good.
Right.
And because we can either limit ourselves or try to prevent too much from. Okay, won't use social media all day, but it's like, but then what ads are you seeing? What content are you being fed? How do you feel about yourself after you look at it? All these things. So I think that just the fact that someone's challenging it is interesting because I don't think this is the issue. Like I said, I think this is the issue of our time. When I said that, I really mean that, but I think as a social issue, I don't mean I'd be much more concerned with people I think it's much more important to be concerned with spiritual matters are much more real and important than we give them credit for. And our culture especially has a hard time dealing with that. So I think that this is, as a social issue, this is kind of as big as it gets because not just what Elon's doing. I just mean that problem in and of itself. And he's just a player in it right now where it's like, what he does could be good or bad, but it's like, it's a big deal that he's trying to do it, I think.
Yeah. And it's not he's causing the problem, and it's pretty much not that he's going to be fixing it. It's more that it's just some of the weirdness in the midst of what is a really unhealthy, and strange product of our modern society. I think there's a lot of parallels though in, back in the day, we had all these empires and kingdoms and totalitarian societies. Now we still have many of those around the world, but developed countries generally aren't, unless you're Russia, like that.
Right.
And so now a lot of that has translated to online stuff where there are weird, like you said, almost like oligarchies and monarchies and things where, people control things where extremely toxic behavior comes in. And I mean, honestly, I think stuff like the metaverse is only going to make all of that worse.
Yeah. I think that's another one where I'm just like
people developing a second identity that they can fully embrace and just be online and nobody can know the difference. Like that's already kind of a thing. Now it's going to be a bigger thing. Like that's not cool. But all of that, turning back to, so where and how do we point this at Jesus? How do we bring the kingdom of heaven here? And so how do we say on Twitter as in heaven? How do we make it on Instagram as in heaven, on Facebook as in heaven, on TikTok or YouTube,
And that's the nice thing about the nice thing, like I said, that's the good thing about Jesus. The good thing is that it's over all things and in all things. And I say over because I do believe that. I believe here's how I like to, think of it. If anybody listening to this happens to not be a Christian, welcome. I'm glad you're listening. My basic belief is that there is a God, right? And that he is powerful. And then I like to think of it, just run a thought experiment if you don't believe that. Like if there was a God, you should probably listen to what he says. That's kind of how I get logically to what I believe, right? So just using that as a framework, and that's how you can, get to, well, if he is, bigger than all things, he's over all things, he could stop existence with a thought. And, if you believe that, well, can't he operate in Twitter? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword, because I understand you can get into some traps about like, well, why does he allow this and that? And, I don't want to go down that road.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of really sensible answers to that. You can believe them or not. It's not
right.
I can't argue into it without talking to you. And I probably couldn't then either. The problem is just, social media is in everything, and like you said, how do we bring the kingdom there? Well, I think it's by understanding the people in it. We are always talking to a human being, even if it's a troll account, like things that people say to me when I'm a pretty confident person, and I think like I have a lot of self-esteem in it, and still sometimes if I'm playing video games and someone says that I suck, like it still sucks, and I'm like, I don't even care about this video game all that much, like it's not like I'm like, oh, this is really going to matter for my kids when I'm dying. Like, did I play well this match? But it still hurts, and they don't know my name. They don't even know who I am. They're just like, what are you doing? And it's like, maybe I should mute them, and so
that's how I felt about this doing the spoken word this week. I was like, what if this sucks? And then we turn on the lights and I'm in the same room as 40 people. Yeah. Like that's that's really embarrassing.
Yep. I know. And so, I think that's one, I try to do that. So even when someone is really bad to me, like I think I've said this before, I just try to be kind and just see if it turns around. And sometimes I'll do it to be like, mean kind, but I mean, I think it's, interacting on social media is basically like, I guess tweet as if you will give an account for every tweet to somebody when you die.
Yeah.
and as if that person reading it mattered. And that changes the whole dynamic, or even what you're putting out there, or what you're retweeting or sharing or liking or spreading, it's a different world if you're, unable to see the fact that, people care about what you post and it affects them and, it matters to them. So,
yeah. Every single one of those people is somebody made in God's image, and they may be living in as strong and intentionally rebellion as they can possibly muster. And yet Romans 5:8 says, God's love is proved to us in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Yeah. And so I think, the Easter moment, if nothing else, it really calls to mind that like, man, these are human beings made in the image of God, and they're made for the glory of God. And just because most of us don't honor God in any way with the way we interact online doesn't mean that, we just get to write them off and dehumanize them. We've got to find ways to bring dignity and humanity back to them and show them a better way. And we can't show them a better way by jumping into the same, poop that they're wading through, or flinging it around too. I think it's possible to redeem it. And, it's funny. Somebody was talking about just this very thing and like how much negative stuff there is on the internet and all of that. We were talking, and they were talking about what a need there is for better teaching and better theology to come out in those social spaces where people are, to have people representing Jesus and shining biblical light and Holy Spirit truth in there. And Mandy just looked at me and kind of like, I know, because she always gives me a hard time about like doing that on TikTok and YouTube and stuff. And I'm like, but like people, like there's a guy I prayed with to like come back to Jesus. Like there's people, a friend of mine just like was doing a live Q&A and an atheist came on there and got saved. Wow. And like, like cool stuff happens, but then also there's stuff where, like there's bad teaching out there. Yeah. And so to correct that stuff or get people to think through it, is really can be very beneficial. And not everybody necessarily has a venue to explore that, and figure that out live and in person. And so all they're hearing is one side of it. And if it's untrue, we have the opportunity. I don't have to physically meet that person to be able to speak truth into the thing that they're wondering about and confused by.
Right.
I can put that out and we can get the truth to more people in better ways. And so I think there's a lot of redeeming possibility to it, but not there's the creepy big brother totalitarian stuff that is a little terrifying. And the amount of just like, we're watching you, we know, that is off-putting for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, that's what's, interesting to see, because from a personal perspective, just as an American who is also a Christian living in this world, I'm fascinated, ensnared with, and disgusted by, social media all at once. And I think it's an interesting time to be alive, because ultimately it does have a place where it's like, should we just leave it to the wolves and just let it be a cesspool? And it's like, probably not. Yeah. But also I do believe, that there's an interesting place, especially experientially, if like you're doing live things on the internet and someone joins in, it's like you said, that's really interesting to me, because, like I went to a thing. It was like a really intense, like, personal, like, I called it a leadership training, but it was really a deep thing where, like, why are you alive? That kind of thing. My pastor does stuff like that. He's a coach with this organization. They do these trainings. They're really fun. They're super like intense. And I remember someone came up to me afterward. They were like, they identified as bisexual, but they also said they were a Christian. So I was just like, oh, cool. Like, I'm not going to touch that right now. Like, because it's like, I have nothing to do with that. It's between you and Jesus. So But they were like, you're just so like, you're 100% Christian, and you don't seem weird or like awkward. And I was like, that's the best compliment I've ever received in my whole life, because it's just natural, to talk about things like if you don't want to hear me talk about Jesus, fine, don't listen to it. I don't really, but like, but also, I mean, I would invite you to experience it more than, you know what I mean? Like,
you're being
because
rad
to me,
for Jesus, Scott.
Yeah, because it's more like, I don't. The thing that sparked this thought in me is like, a lot of times it's hard to navigate with somebody like that. So they identify as bisexual. Okay, so then I think a lot of times Christians immediately go, well, what do I do? And it's like, love them as if they've never, if you're expecting them to act a certain way before they can be in, then you better get out, because you're not acting a certain way in some area for sure. Yeah. And so
100%,
the answer, I think, is, a lot to check yourself. And I've probably said this over and over again, but I think it's so important, especially in this day and age, is like, don't expect people to have the correct theology before they have the correct experience. Because sometimes they get there, and like all through the book of Acts, they get to the right God, but they don't believe the right thing. And over time, that's where discipleship is what God put in place. He didn't put in, if the book, if there was a perfect teaching, he would have written it down. Right. Like have you ever thought about that? It's like, if there was a perfect teaching, it would be in the Bible, to where you needed nothing else. You could just read it and be like, that's it. I can go live in the mountains and buy a horse, and we will be at peace with creation,
live in the mountains and buy a horse.
It's an invitation to discipleship. And this is where our culture sucks, because our culture hates being told what to do. They hate being told they're wrong. They hate being told that there's anything in their truth that isn't jiving with anything else. And yet that's exactly what, God is not afraid to do that at all. He is 100% like, hey, your addiction to porn, that's not working. Yeah. It's not okay. It's not, whatever you think about it, I don't like it. And so, and the fun thing about me is I don't change. Yeah. So, like,
what's nice about Jesus.
Yeah. Well, someone said, God spoke to them once and said, Bobby, this is not my friend Bobby, by the way, but it was Bobby, you and I are incompatible, and I don't change. But that's not God judging him. That's God saying, I'm going to refine you, and I'm going to sanctify you, which is a word that just means I'm going to make you more like me. Walk with me. I'll show you my ways and my deeds and what I do and what I care about. And just by being with me just by being in proximity with me, you're going to change. And that's what I think the world is so desperate for, especially in social media. They're desperate for someone to come alongside them and endure them, you know? And that's what Jesus does. Jesus will endure you. And that's why we have a hard time with his grace, because it's offensive to us. It's I would never accept that prostitute, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, I totally do. And it's like, why?
On the other hand, Matthew 1 literally includes Rahab the prostitute in the lineage of Jesus. So,
it's just such an
take
interesting,
that as you will.
I think social media just makes it a really like sharp, like, how are we interacting with people? And it's like not well,
right?
A lot of the time.
Yeah. No, and that's, and actually, coming up next, the interview that's going to be the second half of this episode, I was talking with a girl that does a lot in the rest of the world. Like, she's involved in fitness and involved in music and stuff, and has a lot of people around that aren't Christians, but they're curious about her faith, not because she's walking around, correcting everybody, but because she's living it in a way that it is an example. And people are going like, dude, there's something great here. I want some of that. What's good in that. And so she gets opportunity to share her faith and everything, in that. And I think that's such a great picture of what that should look like, that if we're truly living for Jesus, then many people will reject it. And they will literally at times, even like, the hatred should come not from our condemnation and they're rejecting our calling out of their sin.
Right.
What it's supposed to be is, for our righteousness, we get mocked and shunned and everything else. That's rarely happening these days. That's never what the church, like right now, the scandals are, this pastor was embezzling and this pastor was a toxic leader who mentally abused all of his employees. This pastor had an affair with all these people and all that, or, this one's secretly addicted to whatever. And it's like, dude, that's not being persecuted for your righteousness. That's not somebody coming after you because you're doing great things. That's you being as worldly as you can while claiming Jesus and being unwilling to repent and turn away from it in the midst of that, instead of like recognizing, even just personally, and going like, oh, I've messed up. I've got to get right. I've got to confess to God. I've got to take steps to eradicate these things from my life. And I don't think that means every time, it comes to public confession, but it also, like some of these people, the whole thing, all the evidence is out and they're still going like, no, it wasn't me, and it's like, what are you, in a Shaggy video? Like, that's not how that works. Like, it's just got me on camera. It wasn't me. No, that's not it. And Jesus knows, dude, like, get right with him. Like, he offers complete grace and forgiveness for these things, but not just so that we can go on sinning.
Right.
It's so that we can step freely into the righteousness and sanctification, like you were saying. And so that's, so for everyone listening, I'm excited for y'all to hear the interview that I have coming up with Megan. Actually, Megan Spencer.
Oh, nice,
Scott. So she's so she
fantastic
plays
drummer.
Yeah, she's really good, and she plays with Jarrett at Purpose Church, and as a professional drummer. And
nice. We should have Jarrett on here.
Tell him that. I've asked him a couple times. He's like, yeah. So he's will
too fancy.
One of these days. He is. He's too cool. He's off making rad videos with everybody. So, but anyway, so stick around if you're listening to this or watching it. We have an interview coming up with Megan, and that's a lot of fun. Scott, thanks for chatting with me. You are great. It's always a good time.
You're awesome. Love you.
Talking with you.
Thank you for
love you.
Thank you for going boldly into the realm of the kingdom first in my life.
Yeah.
By the way,
I'm
fun
glad
fact: my brother became saved way before me, and if it weren't for him, I doubt I would have met Jesus, at least when I did. So thanks. Forever grateful, literally forever.
Me too. No, that one of my favorite moments ever of the process of becoming a Christian and exploring that at first was, conversation we had, kind of reconciling some stuff between us, because I was a pretty horrendous older brother to you for a long time, and
I think you were just a normal older brother, though.
Because
I have 2 opportunities to watch my children, who are, there's 3 of them, so 2 of them are older brothers, and they're pretty on par.
We'll see. We'll see how bad it gets as they get older, but man, I still, it gets me emotional when I think of the conversation that we had the first time. You really pointed out, it meant so much to me to hear you just recognize and point out what Jesus was doing in me, and that was something that you wanted to see as well. Like, that's what was drawing you toward exploring faith in Christ. And man, that the reconciliation of our relationship and knowing that Jesus was making the kind of impact that was appealing to somebody else, that's the whole thing. Yeah. That's the whole thing. 100%.
So do you ever think about how, sometimes I think about our relationship, but just how each individual was, and I'm just I'm like, look, someone could look at us and be like, gosh, they have a long way to go with Jesus, right?
Right. Well, you should see where we started.
Yes, 100%, dude. I'm like, you have no idea how far. Like, Jesus, we will be trophies of grace in eternity, 100%.
Yes.
People will look at what Jesus did in our lives and be like, you can forgive that?
Yeah.
You can restore that?
Over 100%.
And over. I am happy I will boast in the Lord in that way, man. I'm
exactly.
grateful.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing. Scott, I love you, man. And you are Rad for Jesus. Thanks for being on here. Everybody else, stick around. Got a cool interview coming up with Megan Spencer, Megan Spencer Drums on social media. And Scott, we'll talk to you soon. Be Rad for Jesus. Okay, I'm here with Megan Spencer of @MeganSpencerDrums, or as my notifications on my AirPods like to say, Megan Spencer Drums. And she's all over Instagram and TikTok now, and got some YouTube stuff. And she's pretty awesome. Megan, welcome to the Be Rad for Jesus podcast. Ooh. Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so I am just outside of Los Angeles, California. I live in Ontario, and
nice. There's an airport there.
Yes, there's an airport. Yeah, we have a big mall. And
perfect.
It's terrible, but yeah, great old Ontario. And so a little bit about myself. Well, I guess I should preface. I actually know Brian because I was in one of his 5th grade classes when I was his student back then. So yeah, that's how we know each other. And now I'm 24, going to be 25 this year. So you can kind of do the math.
Wow, just threw down like that.
Yeah, just Brian's, you're young. I'm young.
I was in Brian's class more than a decade ago, so do the math, figure out how old he is now.
We're good, but that's how we met. And then around that time, I had started drumming at church and learning how to play, and that basically changed the last 10 years of my life. And so was drumming all the way through high school and ended up going to college for it. And now that's basically what I do. So I teach private drum set students, and I have 26, 27 private students right now. And wow. Then I gig. I'll commute over to LA and do some gigs out there. I do some recording stuff in my little home studio, which I'm in right now. And I have a lot of fun with that. And then I got married 3.5 years ago, and we have 2 dogs, Darla and Bailey. They're great. Awesome. And that's basically my life right now. It's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying where I'm at. So yeah.
That's so cool, man. And you play drums at church, at
yes.
a church where a good friend of ours, also from the same church back in the day, but now at a new one. And yep. So our buddy Jarrett leads worship over there, and you get to sing, play with him. And man, I saw you guys had Joe and all these other people that I know that I was so jealous. I'm like, man, this feels like such a throwback to, my time, our time at Covina like 15 years ago. So.
No, seriously, we have some great people now over at Purpose, so it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Megan, that's so cool. I love hearing, I love seeing and hearing all of the things that you've done on social media. You have so many cool, you do a ton of great drum covers and stuff. And so those are always cool to see, your own flair. And it's weird how many songs you don't think of as having a really intense or really interesting drum beat until you see that drum cover. And then it's like, oh, dang, they threw down. And like my favorite, and it wasn't from I don't remember, I don't want to claim this, but I feel like maybe you also did this one, but there was a guy, one of the first big drum cover videos like this that I remember seeing is a guy who I'm sure you know who he is. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he did the Who Let the Dogs Out cover, drum cover. And anyway, it doesn't matter, but I just remember that one because it was like, when you think of something with like a really intense, complicated drum beat, nobody thinks off the top of my head, songs with great drum beats. Who Let the Dogs Out? Ooh, 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 ooh. But it's so like overly like hyperactive kind of, almost like reggaeton Rastafari kind of beat to it. But it is so complicated and intense. Well, at least the drum cover was. And it's so fast. And that was just such a cool, like, I can't believe I'm really jamming out to this song right now, but like with drums, maxed out and you can see him and he's like, and, whoa. Anyway, so
I'm gonna have to find this video now. I don't think I've ever seen it, so I have to watch it.
Yeah, I'll have to. I'll see if I can find it. But yeah, look up Who Let the Dogs Out drum cover. And I'm sure when you see it, you're going to be like, oh, that guy, of course. Everyone knows him. Yeah. Like, well, I don't know him. You're the drummer I know. You're the famous drummer
I'm
to me.
supposed to know everyone. Okay.
Yeah. See, it's part of your job. You have to know all the people now, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. And so you do this professionally, and then you also serve in the church with that, and you're raising up others, and that's both a cool way to use what you love to be doing more and to be raising up more people and sharing that gift with others. There's some elements of discipleship in that, and so I want to take things back a little farther because like you said, like I know you from back in like 5th and 6th grade. That's a while ago. And that's pretty young. And you were heavily involved in the church and, kids ministry and youth group stuff then already. When would you say, or how did you meet Jesus, or what's the significant turning point where Jesus made a radical shift in your life and you knew this is the way to follow him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up in a Christian family, so I grew up with Jesus and God and church around me for my whole life. Technically, I accepted Christ when I was 4. So, I was a Christian at 4. Did I fully understand what that meant? No. At 4, you're just like, okay, I love Jesus. Yay. But you don't really have like this strong personal connection until you get older. So, honestly, be very honest with you, I probably really made my personal connection and true relationship with Jesus when I was in your class. So probably about 5th grade. 5th and 6th grade. Yeah.
Is that just because you're on with me right now?
It's the honest truth. It was in your class where I really started. Yeah, I really started, feeling like Jesus was personal for me, and he was my savior, my Lord, and I get to have, a private and personal relationship with him, and that started in 5th and 6th grade. And then, I really pressed in during high school, though. High school was such a developmental time, I guess you could say. In high school, you have so many struggles. You're just like going through all the drama, and there's all, there's so much stuff in high school. And I really latched on to God and my relationship with him during that. And he was the only reason I got through high school successfully and didn't turn into a crazy person. But yeah, I would say 5th and 6th grade with you was that like real big turning point, and then through high school it grew stronger and stronger.
Dude, that's awesome. What so I'm curious in that, what makes you say that? Like, what was it about that time, or what was different that you connected with God, or you know, like, do you have anything that like, this is how that started to become my thing, is, you know, learning scripture, or, you know, learning how to pray, or, you know, recognizing this truth, or does that question make sense?
Yeah. No. I think when I entered into being like a teenager, you become more aware of what other people have to say. You become kind of self-conscious sometimes, right? And you're listening to what the world says. You're listening to what your peers are saying, your friends, the leaders and other people, teachers around you. And sometimes those things aren't good, right? And sometimes it can be character shaping, but other times it can just be hurtful. And so I think when I was in junior high school, probably more high school at that point, I realized, like, you know, God, what he says about me is more important. And if he's telling me that, you know, I'm loved, I'm cared for, he, you know, and all these good things about me, and then I have all these other people who are saying all these other things and make me feel all sorts of ways, like, why would I choose to listen to all these other voices when God's saying this about me? And that's when I just had to make that conscious decision. You know what? I'm just going to focus on what God has to say about me and really pull into that. And that's kind of, I guess, what I'm getting at a little bit with my time in high school. But yeah, I was just a self-conscious kid in high school. So
most people are, even if they don't admit it.
Yep, no. It's true. Even though I was like doing the whole drummer thing, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, Megan, she's cool. Like, she plays drums, blah 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 blah." Like, no. If you said any one little thing, I would be like, "Oh no, I'm terrible." Yeah.
No, I get that. Admittedly, and maybe it's more in creative things, but I feel like, you know, the things we see from the pandemic and everything, that is the mental health side of that is real and legit too, that there is, along with anxiety and depression and everything that people struggle with, I think kind of on the surface, but something that leads into a lot of that is, and kind of inherent insecurity. And so that, that security in Christ, in knowing your Savior, is a good anchor point for that, so that doesn't, get out of control. But even for us, like just at, you know, this last week was Easter, right? And for our Easter services, we started with, I kind of remade something that I'd done at a previous church. And so we started with spoken word, and that I had written, and it's in a room with like 40 people, and it's so much scarier there than it was in, like, my last church was a big church, and so there were like, you know, 1,500 people in there at a time, and that was less scary because I'm 40 feet away from the nearest person, because I'm on a huge stage, like back away from everyone, and they're in, you know, like stadium seating off in the back, and they're all in the dark, and I got this spotlight, and it's like, I can't see anybody. I know I'm in this big room, but like, you know, but this, it's like we had most of the lights off and stuff, and it's still like, they're just right there. Like, you know, if I like spit a lot, they're going to feel it, you know, like,
feel it.
And so, and I'm like, I know every person in the room. I know, you know, and so that it was a lot more intense. I was like, I hope this doesn't suck, you know? And it's just this little church, but, it went well, but I was seriously nervous and insecure about doing it. And then people cheered like toward the end as it like builds, and I was like, okay, cool, this is going all right. And then I was like really happy to just get to the like let's go, and like, let's do the song now. And that was way better.
Oh yeah, totally.
But
well, I'm sure God used it in a great way too, though, even with your nerves.
yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think after the fact, like, doing that and being raw about it. And I even asked, like, at rehearsal, I was like, hey, so here's the thing. Should we do this? We can still cut it. And the band was like, no, that's powerful and like raw, and it's real. And I think people, want to hear that. And then that is the kind of things that people gravitate toward with our church anyway. Like, our announcements are always sloppy, and people are like, no, but I love it. Cause it's just like, feels like a real person just telling me stuff instead of like, here's our professional overview, like newscaster giving you the rundown. Yeah. And so like, that's cool for some places. That's just not our vibe.
Sure. No.
Okay. So what is the raddest thing that God has ever done in your life? And while you think about that, like the reason, like the whole thought behind the podcast, right, is that like following Jesus is radically different and radically awesome. And one of the most radically different things that can happen is we meet Jesus. And we'll get to that in a second too. But what's the most radically awesome thing that you have either personally experienced or personally witnessed? Because sometimes that stands out. You're like, I was right there and this happened,
Yeah.
So.
Ooh. That's such a tough thing to answer, because there's so many rad things. Like, obviously, like, there's like so many rad things, like as far as like miracles too, that I've experienced and witnessed and seen, like amazing stuff. But if we're
top 2 or 3.
Really? Top 2 or 3? Oh my goodness. You're making this so hard.
I thought that would be easier. You're like, well, I can think of a few. I don't know which one comes to the top. So this one. Yeah.
Well, maybe one that relates a little bit more to me. Okay. This, you know what? This one will connect with you too. And this was in my younger years, and I just thought it was absolutely crazy. So, and this is more of just kind of like a God working in a very tangible way kind of story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was one time I was in high school, and I was maybe like a sophomore, I don't know. And I was on the worship team with, do you know Emily and Stephen Daraventia, right? Oh, yeah. And I was on the worship team with them. And I, one night, had been in my bedroom, and I was like praying and just pondering on, things of God and just talking with him. And then I was like looking through my like worship binder, had like a bunch of music in there, right? And I was just flipping through whatever and looking at some songs for the next day, and I just set it on my bed and like didn't think twice, right? And then I leave the room, I take my phone with me, and I like go do what I need to do. I come back, and my folder has moved from my bed where I had left it to like the desk. And I was like, okay, why did it move? Like, this is real trippy. Yeah. And I didn't look at it. I just saw it over there, and it's like, that's so weird. And it's like, hey, Morgan, because for those who don't know, Morgan's my twin sister. Brian knows that though. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, Morgan, did you move my folder? And she's like, no, what are you talking about? I have been in my room this whole time. And I was like, okay. Not trying to start a fight. Not kidding. Yeah. No, but, and then I go back in my room, I look at the folder, and it's open to You Won't Relent. You know that song? You won't relent until you have it all. My heart is yours. That one. Yeah. So it was open to You Won't Relent. And obviously I'm tripping out now. I'm like, okay, my folder moved from my bed to my desk, and it's open to You Won't Relent, which I was not on that page before I left the room. This is trippy. At that time, I didn't know how to comprehend that and what it meant. All I knew was, okay, I trust Emily Daraventia, and she's my friend. I'm going to text her, and I'm going to tell her what just happened. Like, this is trippy. Like, why? And so I text her. I'm like, Emily, you would not believe. And my folder just moved, and it was open. You Won't Relent. In that exact moment, on, I guess, her end at her house, she was praying in her room and asking God for a tangible sign that he was there for her. And in that moment, she was listening to You Won't Relent.
Yes.
In her bedroom, worshiping. And my text was the tangible sign that God was looking out for her. And
Dude.
two people in two totally different spaces who had no idea what's going on. And this is how God chose to connect us and use us in that moment.
Oh, I love that.
And it's just
that.
mind blowing. I was like, and that's insane. That has to be probably one of the trippiest things is that my folder moved. I mean, you think about that, like, how?
Yeah,
I don't even want to comprehend. Yeah, and then she's in her room listening to You Won't Relent, asking for a literal sign from God. So, I mean, it's just crazy. God's insane, but he'll do stuff like that. I mean, that's what makes him so rad. Like, he'll do crazy stuff like that.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that too. Thank you for sharing that, because that's one of those things where, I think sometimes, like, somebody would hear something like that and, write it off as a coincidence or whatever else or something. But I have heard so many, and I've experienced so many of those moments where God uses a little thing like that, somebody who had no way of knowing this, and happened to come with that exact thing in that right moment, not because they were going like, okay, God, right now, like, I'm going to test you and show me this, but just somebody who just really, truly needs that. Not because they want to test God, but because they're just going like, please show me. And then the weirdest set of orchestrated events come together where it's like, look, I'm trying to like shout at you. This is what I'm up to. And I see you. And I just, man, I love that so much. That I can think of so many times where I've seen and or heard of God doing stuff very similar to that.
Yes.
And it's awesome. So that is super cool. Did you have another one that came to mind as well while you were sharing that, or that's the one that stands out?
That one has always been the like staple one for me that I'm just like, oh my goodness, I can't get over that story. I get goosebumps every time. But as far as like just other rad things, I mean, like, maybe it's not maybe as much as in like a miracle kind of tangible sense, you know what I mean? But like, and maybe this is skipping ahead, I'm not sure. But anytime in my personal life that I guess I should preface, I felt like God from a young age has always called me to music, and that I should always be in music and using music either, well, obviously to serve him, but also just in general, right? As like a career path too. And so anytime throughout I'm going to say last 10 years that I've tried to stray away from music or do something different or like maybe half music, half this, every single time. It has not worked out. And I have always been pulled back into doing more music and making it the thing. So like it is Jesus. It really is. And that's just a testament to my life. I mean, like, more recent, I had, been doing music like kind of part-time and whatever. And I was working at a dental office the other half of the time. And I was like, felt so uninspired and such, but I was like, oh, but the paycheck's good, so like I'll just stay, blah blah blah. And I just was like, okay, this is what it is, like. But nope, God had other plans. He quickly turned the situation around and opened up a door for me to make music full time. And but he's done stuff like this over the last 10 years because I'm stubborn. It wasn't until recent, like, I mean, literally, like, I guess this past November that I made music full time, and I've chosen, as long as I can keep it full time, that's what I'm gonna do. And so, because it's clearly what he wants me to do, because he's closed doors and opened doors very clearly. So
that's awesome, dude.
For me, that's like the raddest thing, is that he's taken my passion, like the thing I'm already passionate about and that I love, and keeps putting me on that path, and making it happen. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and giving you that talent and passion, I mean, that comes from God. And so giving you that and then going, I'm going to provide a way for you to utilize this in your life and for the kingdom. So, and maybe this is part of that. What's, so the other half of kind of our, purpose as a podcast.
Sure.
What's radically different because for you, and it might be something completely different. Maybe it's something from high school, but following Jesus, the path of the world goes all over the place. Yep. And the path of Jesus is this straight and narrow path that at times really obviously diverges from the way popular society goes. And so where do you personally experience that the most? What's radically different about following Jesus for you?
I would say, especially as of lately too, I feel like I've gotten the chance to implement this more, but is being a true, just like walking example of how a Christian should be amongst non-Christians, and representing Christ just by who I am and my personality with other people. I just started teaching at a newer place again back in like November. And then now I'm like super involved at the gym too. And both those places have, a lot of people who are non-Christians, right?
Yeah.
And with people who are very worldly, we have a lot of different views and thoughts about things. And I think the most radically different thing that I get to display to them is just like Christ through me, being a good friend. Jesus was a friend to everyone, no matter who they were, what they had done. He was a friend. He served everyone. So when I go, to my job, when I go to the gym, I'm trying to serve people, trying to, help them. Like, oh, you need help with this? Okay, I'm there for you. Jesus obviously uplifted those, and I'm trying to uplift those people around me. And I think that as I get older, and I think this happens for a lot of people, I really am taking or seeing what Jesus's example in the Bible was and being like, well, Jesus was like that, so I should be like that. Like, I should really start acting like how he did when he was here, He literally is our example, not just words that we read in in the Bible. And then like, oh, I'm just gonna kind of read this and not do any of it.
For sure.
I think that's the radical thing, and like people realize the difference. I was just telling Nathan, my husband, last night. I was like, Nathan, like I have more community now than I've ever had in like the last couple years, and I told him, I was like, it's crazy. Like I've become the person that people just start talking about their personal lives to and like opening up to. And they're just, I'm just standing there and just having been nice and a good person. And they're laying all this out. And because of that, like, hey, I get to actually encourage them and give them wisdom that they may not know is biblical wisdom, but it is. Just sneaking it in, And it's been really awesome. And I've had the opportunity to invite all these people to church and try to get them in and like drop little Jesus nuggets.
Jesus nuggets. That's awesome. Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's the raddest part about it. Awesome. Yeah, he's just been using me a lot like that lately. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's great, especially right now. I think so much of the narrative about church and about Christians is that it's so negative right now. And then even amongst like church culture, there's all the like the deconstruction testimonies are really big, and that's never what people call them, but that really is what it is. People are giving testimonies of why they don't go to church, and it's almost always related back to, it's never like, well, God didn't show up, God didn't do this. It's like everything was cool, and then these people suck, and so I think the more we can show that we're not all like that, the better, and I think that's huge for people to see. Oh, this is what Jesus looked like you said, like this is the way Jesus treated people. So I'm trying to treat people that way. And that is different. And it comes from a different place, even than other people who are nice. Like it in general, that stands out. And when people go, why are you being like this?
Yeah.
Exactly. Check out Jesus. So yeah. Sorry, something just flew into my eye.
You're getting emotional.
I am. I'm feeling verklempt. All
It's
right.
so beautiful.
I need a moment. Rhode Island is neither a road nor an island. Consider. Yeah.
There you go.
Oh boy. Random throwbacks. Okay, so I have a couple of somehow or other I like to do games with people because, being in youth ministry for a long time, I like to, just have a fun. So without, thinking them through too much, just kind of rapidish response. You've been playing drums for a long time. And so, this is more just like the fun side, I guess, more than a game, but, tell me what's the biggest drum fail you've had in worship, in church specifically? I want to ask about in church specifically. What's the biggest fail?
I have two.
You got two. All right. Let's
They're
hear 'em.
so worth it. I'll go fast with the first one. So the first one, I was playing in. Luckily, this was actually during a rehearsal. Thank the Lord. If it happened live, I don't know what would have happened, but it was during a rehearsal. But I was playing. I'm in the full drum cage with the plexiglass around me and the top and the back, so it was fully enclosed. And I'm playing. We're going for it. Playing some fast song. All of a sudden. The whole cage collapses on me. I didn't stop playing. I was playing with the cage on my back, like with the whole thing on top of the back and the front on top of me, and I'm still playing. I'm like, help! And I don't know why I kept going because it's just rehearsal, but that was one. That was pretty bad. And then two.
That's amazing.
This is my favorite one. This one happened live. I was playing just one of the worship songs, and let's pretend it's I don't know. Let's pretend it's Oceans, because everybody knows that song, right? Let's pretend it's Oceans. I was playing, and we're going for it, and I had played the whole song and kept my mouth closed the whole time. Normally I sing along, but for some reason this time I had my mouth closed. And keep in mind at Purpose, we have a bunch of cameras around us, and there's one camera right in front of me. There's like a GoPro right here if they pan to that angle. So GoPro's right in front of me, watching me. We're about to go into the big like final chorus, and I will call upon your name. I've kept my mouth closed the whole time. I'm going into it. Bill, da 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 da, and I will call. I open my mouth to sing, and oh my goodness, I realized I didn't swallow my spit the whole song. And
I thought that's where this was going, and I was like, "Come on, yes."
And my spit came both sides of my mouth flowing down onto my shirt, and the GoPro caught the whole thing. And the camera crew was like, "What was that?" It's like that.
Man. Do you have the production? Do you have the producer in your ear for that? Like, did you hear them commenting that, or no?
No,
or was
I didn't.
afterward?
Okay. It was afterwards. I didn't have him in my ear, but man. It was so, and then
great.
I was playing, and then I was, because I didn't know what to do. I had to keep playing because we were at the biggest moment of the song. So I literally took my shoulder, and was like,
that's people talk about like stank face when you're playing, and like that's a whole next level of like.
It was so bad. That was my favorite.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I felt like, in Big Hero 6, when Hero is first like relaying the plan, and he's like, we're going to be superheroes. And it like right when he starts to get it, and you see Fred like looking around, and he's like, yeah. Like I felt like that just now. Like I know where this is going.
I know.
Yes.
It has to be one of my golden moments. Of drumming. That's amazing.
There's a video that came out recently of you can hear the music director in everybody's ears at a church where they have all this, they have live camera crew, they have all the thing, everybody's got the in-ears in so they can all hear the band director giving direction of like what's coming next, and they have crowd mics. which I don't know why they chose to do it this way, because most people will hang mics up high where you're like getting an overall sound, but you're not getting like, it doesn't look like it. You're at a college university where you're like lining up to take questions, you know, but these guys had floor stands with mics pointed at the audience for crowd mic. Some generous congregant felt like that was their cue to come up and sing into it. And they did. And this person, they are of the joyful noise gift set.
Yes.
And so, I mean, like, I don't even, so let's say it's Oceans. I forget which song it was. It's not Oceans. And they're going into like Rattle next or something, which comes up in the thing. But as they're going, the guy's like, you know, it's like, and I will call upon, you know, here's the song going, your name. And then, and keep my eyes above the waves. Like, just not the same key. He's not in rhythm. He's not like everything is wrong.
No.
And then all of a sudden, I mean, you don't see him, but you can hear the music director just like, turn that off, turn off the crowd mics, turn off the crowd mics. Oh my gosh, turn off the crowd mics. Okay, swell. Somebody turn off the crowd mics. Come on, turn off the crowd. Okay. We're swelling. And the guy sings an entire chorus and then goes back finally at the end of the song. He's like, and now we're on to rattle in D, rattle in D, rattle in D, or, you know, whatever the song is.
Yeah.
And he's like calling out for the next. And it's just like, oh my, it's like the weirdest mixture of, yes, this is why it's difficult to play on stage in a big church, because you have the in-ear with like the click and chorus 2, 3, 4. And you're like, oh my gosh, you know, whatever. Yeah. But then you also have, you know, and then with a live music director, then you have somebody actually shouting instructions into your ear. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd play so many wrong notes. Like I struggle enough just with the click and the cues. And then of course, I swear, like anytime it really matters where I need to know what that thing's telling me to do next, like where your timing's off, or it's like, I don't know if we're on the 5th or the 10th bridge right now. So I don't know when we go back to the chorus or drop out or whatever. I never, ever hear that thing when I need it. I always hear it when I don't want it. And I'm like, I know where I am. Shut up. You know? And then all of a sudden I'm leading and I'm like singing my heart out and the thing shouts something in my ear and I'm like, I don't know what it said.
No, that's the worst. We had to do that this weekend with, you know, the song Risen, Risen, He's Risen, Forever Glorified. That one. We did that one with, because we just put on a huge thing for Easter Sunday this weekend because we remodeled our sanctuary and this was the reopening of it. So we had our main choir, our orchestra, our kids choir, and our worship team all playing. I know there was like at least 150 people on stage, and at least. And so, and
you have more people on stage than I had at my whole church for Easter.
Right? It was insane. And so we normally don't play with click, but with that song, there's so much like synth and electronic stuff that we really needed it to fill it up. So we had click and track. And so just for that song, and man, it's been a hot minute since I've had to play with one, and every single time I just cranked that click up so I could hear the chorus 2, 3, 4 in my ear, and I was like, and making sure it's on point to keep all those people playing. I was stressing out, but it was still good.
And that's the hard thing about it that people don't hear too, because like, I mean, you need it to come ahead of time so you have the lead in to it. But it's like, if you think about like, there's something happening right there, you know, like, like we sang, you know, Living Hope and, you know, like verse 3, I've done that song to a click as well. And that's a really hard one for me to do to the click, because at the end of verse 3, you know, it goes back, it's like now chorus, or, you know, build. That's what it was. It had a thing that says build, but I'm not hearing it. And so it sounds like just, and like I heard something, I'm like, I don't know if that was bridge. We're not going to the bridge, we're going to the chorus. And I went to the chorus a whole measure too early, because you hold it, because I can't think of it. It's because it comes in a measure early, and so it's
has robbed the grave.
Jesus, yours is the victory. Whoa, and on that whoa, you hang on that last note for an extra measure, and so you know. Yeah, because the first time it's really quiet and you don't do the fifth line, you just do the first chunk, and so you do that, and then you sing it again. Like death has no claim on me, or the grave has no claim on me, and then you start over, and then and you're singing it bigger now, and so it's like I'm blowing out my own ears here, like I'm singing much louder than I can hear, and then and Jesus, yours is the victor. Build 2, 3, and I'm like, what? Victor, huh?
You just repeat the same line 3 times till it gets on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then you can't do stuff like that with a click because the click has moved on. Now it's getting all sorts of cues and and if you have pads and synth lines or like lead parts 15 through 20 in there, you have all these other sounds that will throw off the key and everything, and that's always rough. I much prefer to just be like, look, here, I'm going to do this and I'm just going to nod at you and you start singing. Literally no one cares.
Yep.
The congregation's not like, well, I was worshiping. And then the guy nodded at the girl to start singing and I was just thrown out.
I was pulled out of worship right then and there.
I can't praise the Lord with head wagging going on like that.
Yeah.
That's
head wagging.
Head waggling. Let's just go back to hymnals. Forget it.
Hymnals.
I like to throw in the hymns. I like to do the Phil Wickham vibe though, where you like throw in a little bit of a hymn as like a reprise on a song or something, or like for songs that don't really have a strong bridge. And it's like, I don't want to do the chorus for the 800th time, so let's go to something else, and then you lead out with something. So yeah, we closed out Living Hope with "Oh Praise the Name," which Hillsong kind of brought that back because they did a song where they put the first line of that hymn as the chorus, "Oh praise the name of the Lord our God," and all that. But we just sang it a cappella after, say Hallelujah, Christ has. I don't remember all the lyrics because all we sang were resurrection songs, so I forget. But it's hallelujah, all this. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, our living hope. God, you are our living hope.
Yeah,
and then back to. And then just a cappella. Oh, praise the name of the Lord. And that's, I love those moments when it's like, here's a song. And like, you can hear the old guys that like, they tolerate the new worship. Yes. And so then all of a sudden, everybody's singing. It's like, oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. All of a sudden these huge baritones come in. You're like, I know. See you, sir. All right.
Yeah. You hear all the 70-year-olds pulling out their pipes. Yeah. Just, they're getting it.
Yeah. You're like, why don't you sing like that on, whatever other song? Like, come on. This song could have used that kind of power.
Totally.
All right.
I love it.
Man.
That's great.
That was fun. Okay. What, here's one last silly question, I think, just to bring it back, and then we'll sort of wrap this thing up. Nice. I'm curious, in your opinion, as a drummer, what is the most spiritual drum?
Spiritual drum? What kind of question is that?
I don't know. That was just like the dumbest thing that I'd come up with beforehand. And I had it written down and I was like, wait, I got to ask this. What's the most spiritual drum?
I've never had anybody ask me that. That's really funny. I mean, in the Bible, it says to praise them with clanging cymbals. So, I mean,
come on now.
It could be cymbals, but
and there's our Jesus juke.
Yeah, exactly. But
I need the air horn sound like "Brr, brr, brr, Jesus juke,"
Yeah, it totally could be. But I think my personal favorite is, I'm gonna have to say kick. I think the kick drum, just because that is if I'm feeling it and the Holy Spirit is like, here we go. Guess what comes in first? My kick, like. That kick is driving it to be bigger, and I've had
the rhythm of heaven is 4 on the floor. Come on,
exactly 4 on the floor all the way. I've literally had people tell me like, oh, when you play, I feel like like the heart, like kind of what you said, like the heartbeat of heaven. Like I feel like the Holy Spirit as like a heartbeat through your drumming. Yeah. I'm like, okay, when I think heartbeat, I think boom, 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 or boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Which is like like a kick, like a kick. You gotta
do those
right?
like galloping double kicks,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I think of it like a kick. So I'm like, okay, I would say probably kick. But if we're talking about actual biblical, I mean, I guess the cymbals, but the cymbals suck. No,
no, cymbals. You can't be the person who's just
no, clanging cymbals. You're just standing there.
Yeah, no, using. Yeah, there's all sorts of verses like that. And then in the negative, there's in the beginning of 1 Corinthians 13, where Paul says, if you do these things but have not love, then you're a resounding gong or a clanging. So if you speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but you have not love, then you're just a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. And so when talking about some hot topics in the past, I will start the message by bringing a hi-hat or a crash out on stage with me. Oh, and and I'll stand there and I'll just be like, hey, everybody. And I'll just, while I'm doing the intro, I'll just start smashing on the cymbal and everyone's like, wow, what is happening?
I have to see a video of that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that hard to listen to? 1 Corinthians 13:1 says, if I speak in the tongue of men and of angels, but I don't have love, I'm a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. And let's be honest, when people talk about this, we might as well just be smashing a cymbal because that's all we're doing. But it's even worse because it's not just an annoying sound. It's like hurtful words and just hate spewing. And it's doing this kind of like ear splitting damage to their soul and their heart. So let's back it up and talk in loving ways.
One way to preach. I like it. I like it. Yeah, that's how you reach a drummer's heart.
See, reach a drummer's heart and everybody else is like, I'm not coming back anymore.
Yeah.
He was loud. So, but I am loud anyway. Like I always have they tell me both on camera and on faders, they have to play Chase the Pastor. Cause I get real quiet and I got to do that, let's bring it down. And I can watch my sound wave before I edit it, for like the podcast after the fact. Yeah. I can see it and it's like peaking and clipping like at sections. And then all of a sudden it's down to like almost nothing, but I'm like, leading into the prayer at the end. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing that thing. But it's like how it all goes. Cause it's like, this is big. And also,
you have to be animated.
Jesus. Yeah.
You got to engage them.
I am. This is why God gave me ADD, so I could be crazy.
Flail around.
Right. Yeah.
I love it.
So, oh man, Megan, it's so fun talking with you. Okay, so my last question would be for those those people at the gym, those people, your drum students, whatever else. What is your when you get the opportunity to share, like why are you this way? Why do you, why are you being so kind? Why are you being so helpful? What's different about you? Why do you have that joy or that hope? Like whatever it is that people see in you, how do you explain why following Jesus is worth it? Like this radically different attachment for life and path for life. Why is that worth it? Yeah.
To me, he's my constant. He's my comforter. He's always there. I think I try to imagine what it would be like to not have Christ and how anybody could function. And I'm like, you'd put your faith and your hope in things that are constantly changing. And that what I would tell people is that Christ is never changing. He's the only thing that he's always constant. He won't change. So no matter what happens in your life that keeps shifting and things keep surprising you, you're taken by, just surprise. And no, he's always going to be there and be the same for you regardless of your situation. So I would say that's what's so rad about Jesus. He's always there. Honestly, any trials I've ever gone through, the first thing I do is I pray. I sit down and I'm just like, God, what's happening here? Can you give me wisdom about this? I need to hear from you now. Like, can you just be there for me? I just need to feel your presence. And that's what's so powerful about him. He's your and not that he's just like this some high up being, that like is watching out for us. He's also my closest friend. Yeah. Think about always having your friend as like, he's just right there. Your best friend. You can call on him any moment. Yeah. He's your friend that's always going to be there. Like, yeah, I see God as my father too, but I think mostly as friend. And I think for people who feel alone and lost, which we all do at times, like he's right there just ready to be your friend, give you a hug, wrap you in that spiritual hug, and and just guide you. He wants to love on you, and he just wants that love in return. And that's what's so rad about him, honestly. Awesome. Is he's in every situation, in every place I go, even teaching students or being at I have felt his presence and felt him with me at every single one of those places. Because he's, always there and guiding me and giving me discernment about what I should say for this, what I should do for this, So yeah, he's a constant friend, comforter, and obviously my heavenly father. But yeah, that's what makes him so rad. That's awesome. Yes,
absolutely.
Yep.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good to catch up with you. And man, it's always so encouraging. Just to see everything you do, but to hear from you as well, and to be able to catch up and all of that is amazing, and just makes me proud in the most, like, I have nothing to do with this kind of way, but just to know, somebody
you have so much to do with this.
Well,
literally,
for my part, thank God I got to participate and have a front row seat to seeing, like, man, here's a young lady who, has something special about the way that she loves Jesus and about the way God has gifted her. And so to see you continuing to serve and apply your gifts to the church, and just the way you serve in the world, and, through fitness and through drum instruction and everything, and sharing your passion with others. I love it, and representing Jesus well all over the place. And it just, makes my youth pastor heart proud, happy.
Yes.
So for anybody who wants to hear your awesome drummingness and all of that, where can people, if they want to follow you or connect with you, where can people do that?
Yeah, Megan Spencer Drums on Instagram. And then on YouTube, just Megan Spencer. You could put drums after it in the search bar and my profile will still come up. TikTok, it's also Megan Spencer Drums. So, I'm all over the social medias.
Excellent. Yeah. And for real, really cool drum covers. Highly recommend. Go follow Megan Spencer Drums, or as Siri likes to tell me, it is Megan Spencer Drums.
Yes.
I don't know why she says it like that.
It's terrible.
It said it. It calls my handles, it's Brian Lucas. And so it's like from Instagram, it's Brian Lucas. Megan Spencer Drums. And I'm like, what nonsense is this?
I love it.
Like that old Vine video of the guy who would pronounce things wrong. It's like pronouncing words incorrectly, pronouncing words incorrectly.
I almost didn't understand what you said. You did that so well.
I watched those Vines a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, people, that's awesome. Megan is Rad for Jesus. Follow her on socials, see excellent drumming content. And Megan, thank you so much. I'm going to have to find an excuse to chat with you again soon.
Yes. Oh, you're rad.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, that's it for this week's episode of the Be Rad for Jesus podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've stuck around this long, you either hate us so bad you want to find out where to complain, or you really loved it and you want to come back for more. I want to tell you how to do that. You can go to beradforjesus.com, and we have links to everywhere you can stream and subscribe to our podcast. We have episodes, we have show notes, all on there. Or you can find us on anchor.fm or on the Anchor app. You can find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. And if there's another platform that we don't offer yet, hit us up on the website or through Anchor and let us know where you listen to podcasts and where you would like to hear or engage with this. If you do enjoy the podcast, would you consider leaving us a review, leaving us a rating, sharing it with a friend, posting it on social media, and or even going above and beyond and supporting this podcast? You can do that on Anchor, and that would for sure help us make more episodes of this podcast, because caffeine definitely fuels just about everything we do, almost as much, but not quite as much as the Holy Spirit and our love for Jesus. That said, I hope you have a rad day. Go out and do something incredible. Be rad for Jesus, because following Jesus is radically different and radically awesome.